Hi, my name is Stephen Torres, and welcome to the True Manhunt Podcast. Today, we will be discussing the killing of the famous crime duo, Bonnie and Clyde. This was a major event for the police forces in the United States. The duo had been going on a crime spree throughout Central America, along with robbing many small-time stores and funeral homes. They had murdered at least 9 officers and 4 civilians. The FBI and other police forces tried to apprehend them between the years 1931 and 1934. In the spring of 1934, they were ambushed and killed by Texas Ranger Francis Frank Augustus Hammer and his posse of police officers. Frank had been on the hunt for them for 3 months with his partner Monty Galt. Now, let's dive into the moments leading up to the end of one of the biggest crime sprees in America. Frank Hammer hated waiting. Him and his posse had been waiting for hours for the crime duo to arrive. Frank's hair felt like he had just walked out of the shower. The humid environment of Louisiana made it difficult just waiting here. The drops of his sweat and dust filled up his body's sense of smell. But he's been waiting for this moment for months, and he isn't going to let some heat affect him. No, I need to be ready for them. I'm not losing them again, he thought to himself. Gosh darn, Frank, why'd those two have to pick the hottest day of the spring to come down to these parts? Remarked his partner Monty Galt, as he was wiping the drops of sweat running down his forehead. He's right, Captain, replied one of the officers in the posse. This adds to these two's insanity. All of you, be quiet and be ready, snarled Frank, hardened eyes looking at his crew. I don't want them to escape this time. Today is where we end it. Geez, Cap, cool off, another officer replied. Frank didn't like this one bit. As he stood up to teach the officer a lesson, the scouting ranger came running down the road. Captain, they are here, about 5 miles down the road, he yelled, as he ran towards the group. Frank turned back to the posse and commanded, Everyone, get your weapons, and on my signal, come out ready to fire. This is it, boys. Be ready. The crew hurried to grab their weapons, and everyone waited, hiding behind the bush for the car to appear. It was super quiet as they waited. The buzz of a bee's wings and a light breeze pushing through the tree branches were the only sounds. Frank's eyes were locked down the road. Now Frank wasn't ever a nervous man. Being a Texas Ranger left no room for nerves, but right now, Frank was feeling it. These two were cop killers that have caused way too much harm to the people in Central America. This needed to end today. There was no room for failure. The hum of the car's engine could be heard coming down the road. And then, there it was. The 1934 Ford V8. It was something that the duo had last stolen. And all that Frank knew was that this car was the last thing they would steal. They would be sent to jail to pay for their crimes. But right now, Frank was focused on his and his men's survival. As the car was a couple yards away, Frank signaled for his men, and they stepped out of their hiding spots, weapons aimed at the car. The car came to a screeching stop as the wheels dug into the dirt. Frank's eyes were locked on the man in the driver's seat, Clyde Barrow. Clyde's eyes were wide like saucers, with his mouth agape as he looked at the group. Frank's eyes moved to the left to see Clyde's associate, Bonnie Parker, a little woman no heavier than 90 pounds and no taller than 5 feet. She was in a similar state that Clyde was in, shocked that they had finally been caught. Frank laughed lightly to himself. As Frank was making the call for their surrender, Clyde's eyes darted down and his arms reached for something. Frank's eyes widened as he yelled to his crew, Fire! Fire! The posse shot out towards the car. The bullets fly towards the car, embedding themselves into the metal and into the people inside. It was as if there were fireworks going off, and the sounds were loud in Frank's ears. His gun finally came to a stop as he ran out of ammo, same as his crew. Frank signaled for them to stop as he began creeping towards the car with narrow eyes. He looked through the front windshield before quickly looking away. Is it done, Frank? Asked Monty as he walked towards Frank. Frank gave a small sigh of relief before saying, They're both dead. Call the closest precinct. Tell them Bonnie and Clyde are dead. Monty nodded as he told the crew that their job is done. The actions taken by Frank Hammer, although considered controversial by people around the world, saved more innocent lives that could have been taken by Bonnie and Clyde. His finding of the two killers finally put an end to the crime spree and terror that they had been causing in Central America. The killing of these two restored the feeling of safety for the citizens in America, as well as teaching law enforcement that they needed to use more effective ways of finding and capturing criminals. Law enforcement added the use of two-way radios in police cars, along with considering bank robbery and kidnapping federal crimes that could be investigated by the FBI. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of the True Manhunt Podcast. Make sure to come back next week for the discussion of more of the USA's biggest criminals. Have a good rest of your day.